going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are going to be going through all 32 NHL teams as we get ready for our next live stream. Again, the schedule is set every Sunday morning. We are going to be doing a weekly power rankings. So, without further ado, let's get into the topic for this week, which is not going to be a power rankings. This is the last non-power rankings video till the end of the season. So what we're doing today is we're going to take a look at all 32 teams and what each team needs in order to make the playoffs in 2024, which I can't believe I'm even saying that, but yeah, 2024. So, of course, there's a lot of things that need to fall into place for certain teams, like borderline miracle, jackpot lottery winning numbers, but there is a chance, right? Everybody starts off at 0 points, 0 wins, 0 games, so we'll see what happens here. So, make sure before we get too far into today's video, guys, make sure to like and subscribe here to the channel. I definitely do appreciate that. And spread the word to get you guys here for Sunday mornings for a weekly power rankings. So without further ado, let's start off in alphabetical order, as we always do around here, at Anaheim. So the Anaheim Ducks had an interesting offseason. They didn't do too much in the sense of like super skilled players coming in. There is hope that Leo Carlsson makes the roster. Hopefully Jamie Drysdale's in the lineup. We know there's some contract negotiations still going on there. Trevor Zegras will be in the lineup for the Ducks. That's great news. But it's more about the veterans that they brought in. They bring in Alex Killorn. He'll miss the first 6 weeks of the season with a hand injury. So that's a tough loss to start the year for the Ducks. Radko Gudas, I think he might become a favorite of mine there in Anaheim very quickly. Radko Gudas is a beast, and he is a big part of what I think the Ducks are going to need in order to make the playoffs this year. So the Anaheim Ducks could make the playoffs if they're defensively structured, and there's buy-in to that defensive structure. Now, that's still asking for a lot because, you know, to be completely honest with you, the Ducks are going to need even more than that. They're going to need depth scoring. They're going to need John Gibson back on his game. But the way I look at the Ducks is you're going to get the best version of John Gibson if the defensive structure in front of him is better. I think a lot of the frustration coming from him is the fact that I don't have a legitimate team in front of me. So now that there is a team there, it seems like things are going well. I think you need to see a better performance from John Gibson in the event that their defense is better. You need to see better defense, and I think you're going to see a better Gibson, and everything else can kind of come forward from that. The Arizona Coyotes. Now, the Coyotes are another one similar to the Ducks, where they're going to need a lot of acrobatics to make their way to the playoffs, but I think a lot of it's going to come down to as well the fact they're going to need a lot from that defense. Specifically J.J. Moser, who looks really promising, a good defensive prospect that a lot of people are pretty high on, including myself. J.J. Moser and Victor Soderstrom. Now that Jacob Chychrun has left the organization, you know, you're starting to see a little bit of a changing of the guard here. J.J. Moser, Matt Dumba comes in there. He's probably going to be playing with Moser on that top pair. We need to see a little bit more from this Coyotes defense. Some of those younger guys stepping in. You know, Sean Durzi has had some mitigating success in the NHL, most recently with the Kings. So there's a lot to like about the Coyotes moving forward, but a lot of it's going to be done through that blue line. The Boston Bruins. Now, the Bruins, if they are to make the playoffs, it's going to be a lot more difficult than last season. I think this is a team that could eventually be a wild card team at some point this year. There's just such a different outlook on the Boston Bruins than what we're used to. So when I take a look at a team like the Boston Bruins, it's all about scoring. And with Bergeron and Krejci no longer there, they need David Pastrnak to lead the team in scoring. David Pastrnak is the lightning bolt to the lightning rod for this team. And everything moves through David Pastrnak. Pastrnak is not the captain of the Bruins, but they're going to expect more leadership from him, absolutely. As well as Charlie McAvoy and the new captain, Brad Marchand. But I'm pretty confident in the goaltending, pretty confident in the defense, but they're going to need help with Jake DeBrusk and David Pastrnak leading the way up front. The Buffalo Sabres. So the Buffalo Sabres, there's a couple ways you can go here. They've got a very young forward core that's starting to develop. Casey Middlestat, Dylan Cousins, Tage Thompson, JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn. I mean, how much further down the list can I go? There's a lot of good hockey players there in Buffalo. And on the back end, Owen Power, Jacob Bryson, so Matthias Samuelsson. So the one thing that is the most concerning for me, and ultimately is part of the reason of what did the Sabres in last season, was the goaltending. And the goaltending looked good once Devin Levi got in there, but to expect that for a full 82-game schedule going into this season is a different task. Now, we expect Devin Levi and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to be the goalie tandem going into this season. UPL struggled last year. There was definitely points in that season. He had some growing pains. That's got to get better for the Sabres if they want to make the playoffs. And same thing for Devin Levi. Like I said, he came in at the end of the season and there wasn't a ton of pressure on Buffalo. Rode that momentum wave right till the final game of the season. They came really, really close. So there's going to be expectations there in Buffalo that they could get back to the playoffs. They're going to need good goaltending in order to do that. So the Calgary Flames are an interesting team, and some would argue the most interesting team in the National Hockey League. And the reason a lot of people are saying that is because of just the amount of talent and potential on the Calgary Flames. But we saw what happened last year with Daryl Sutter, that even with all that skill and talent, doesn't necessarily lead to success. And that's why when I look at the Calgary Flames today, a lot of it is going to be what they get from Ryan Huska, the new head coach of the Calgary Flames. Now, we always talk about how the assistant, the good cop, becoming the bad cop as the head coach, can sometimes that transition sometimes doesn't work. And to be honest with you, most of the time doesn't work. Because the way the pecking order works, the head coach usually is the quote-unquote bad cop. He's the bad guy. Everybody, kind of has a little bit of push and pull with the head coach. And usually the pull comes from the assistant coach, who is more the player's guy. Hey, listen, not a big deal. Pats him on the back when he needs it and kind of softens the blow. Well, now that he is no longer the assistant and is the head coach, that puts a much different dynamic in place here for Ryan Huska. And, like I said, I think the Calgary Flames are going to be a good team, but I am not sold on that dynamic being a good thing for the Flames. They've got some good players. They've got Huberdeau, Kadri, Mangiapane, Backlund is back, now the captain. I think we're going to see some success early on. I think it's going to catch up to them as the season goes along. This is not the Pacific Division of the past 2 or 3 years. This is a really good division. And you have the Vegas Golden Knights, who are looking to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. The LA Kings have gotten better. The Edmonton Oilers, we know what they are. And then there's some middle ground teams like Vancouver, Seattle, Anaheim, that are going to make things all the more difficult in that division. And I don't know if Calgary is necessarily that much better than the middle of the pack of this division. So they're going to need some buy-in to that new coaching staff. Carolina. So Carolina, what I like about Carolina is the amount of depth that this team has up front, on the back end, good goalie tandem, one of the best in the league. But it's also the structure of the team. And Rod Brind'Amour, on any given season, the way they play is not fun. It is not fun to play against the Hurricanes. They give up maybe 10 to 15 shots a game. They do not give you much. And that's why I think it's going to be important that it's not necessarily those things, because I expect them to have good goaltending and defense and depth scoring, but can they stay healthy? Specifically the guys like Aho and Svechnikov and Teravainen, because we did not have those players through parts of the playoffs last year. And that was a huge part of the reason why Carolina didn't go where they wanted to go, was because of that lack of the scoring that they really needed in their lineup. A lot of guys got hurt in the playoffs, and they did well considering, but you need those guys to be healthy, 1,000% ready to go for puck drop. And I'm interested to see what Carolina looks like. A lot of people expect them to compete at the top of that division, rightfully so. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in Raleigh, North Carolina. The Columbus Blue Jackets, another team kind of like Calgary, in the sense that what you have in Columbus is a team that with the coaching change, yeah, we never saw Mike Babcock as the coach of this team, but you know what the message was going into the season. And now, again, you have a similar situation where you have the bad cop, old style, traditional coach coming in, being replaced by the assistant coach, who is the good cop. And that's the case here for Columbus as well. This is an incredibly difficult task here for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I believe it's Pasquale, Coach Pasquale. That's a tough role because he came into the season expecting to be the assistant. And now, next thing you know, here he is given the head coaching job. Pascal Vincent. He could be a really good coach. There's definitely potential here. But the circumstance, it's immediate adversity here for Pascal Vincent. So we'll see how things go, but they need to galvanize this group after that situation with Babcock. And again, this could be something that ends up dividing the room even more because of the lack of buy-in from Goudreau and Boone Jenner during the summer when that whole situation happened. It's going to create an interesting dynamic and environment to start the year in Columbus. So we'll see how things go. Hopefully things go well for them, but they're going to need that group to galvanize and come together. And again, especially in that division, a lot of things are going to have to go Columbus's way this year. Colorado, a little bit of a different circumstance here because they were the perennial Stanley Cup favorites last year. They lose to the Kraken in the first round, and they're angry. This is an angry Colorado Avalanche team. They're facing their own bit of adversity. They're going to probably have the entirety of their season without their captain. Once again, Gabe Landeskog expected to be out the entirety of this season. We found that news out during the summertime. And I'm not concerned about their scoring depth. They've got some there. I'm not concerned about their defense. They probably, in my opinion, they have the best defensive pairing in the National Hockey League in Devon Toews and Cale Makar. It's going to be goaltending. Pavel Francouz, not expected to start the season. He's expected to start the season on LTIR. And if that's the case, that means Justice Anunen will be the backup behind Alex Georgiev. And Alex Georgiev has had some interesting numbers in his career with the Colorado Avalanche. He put up some good numbers in New York as a backup, but now you're talking about him in the sense of being the guy. And that was an adjustment last year, and now you don't have a great backup and a Noonan behind him. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. They need good goaltending if they want to make the playoffs. And shout out to Irish for being in the chat. Thank you so much, Irish. He said Drouin to the moon, and that's a huge thing everybody is talking about is Jonathan Drouin playing with his former Halifax Mooseheads teammate in Nathan McKinnon. So those two guys, if they can tear it up, that's going to be a really, really good team there in Colorado. So definitely going to need those things to go their way. Now, Chicago, this is one where you're really pulling at strings here because Chicago is not expected to be a good team. And the way I look at the Chicago Blackhawks, if they are to make the playoffs, they need a ton of scoring depth behind Connor Bedard. Because I look at this roster, and there's some pieces there that give you some kind of hope, but a lot of unproven guys that you don't know, or it's the other spectrum where it's proven guys, you know what they are, but they're not that good. And the reason I say that, Nick Foligno, Corey Perry, Tyler Johnson, Jason Dickinson, you know what you're getting with those guys. But then you have guys like Cole Gutman, Taylor Radish, Phil Kurashev, Lucas Reichel. A lot of guys that are, to be truthfully honest, the opposite. Just unknown commodities that we don't know how much they're going to play. Now, a lot of these guys did play last season. I think that's going to be a benefit for the Blackhawks. But it's definitely going to be an adjustment period. This is a defense that could look really good this year and actually surprise some people. Wyatt Kaiser, Kevin Korchinski, Alex Vlasic. Definitely keep an eye on that left shot for the Chicago Blackhawks. Don't forget, they have prospects like Ethan Del Maestro as well. So this Blackhawks team, they're going to need good scoring depth. They're going to need good production on the blue line. I have no faith in that goaltending, and I think that's ultimately what's going to do them in. But I figured everybody would say that, right? Is the goaltending needs to be perfect and superb. But I'm going to go with the depth scoring. The Blackhawks are going to need that as well. All right, so let's move on to the Dallas Stars. So we're heading down to the big state down in Texas. So the way I look at a team like Dallas, they are almost as close to a perfect team as you can get. And they added Matt Duchene this summer. They bring back What's his name? Evgeny Dadonov. Is it Dadonov? I always forget. They always add some kind of Russian to their lineup. It is Evgeny Dadonov. Matt Duchene comes into the lineup from Nashville. And what I really like about this team is they have so many young players that could jump in as well. So you don't want to rely on that, though. And that's why I think the key for the Dallas Stars this year is pretty simple. Stay healthy. I think staying healthy is important for them. Keeping guys like Tyler Seguin in the lineup, Jamie Benn, Joe Pavelski. Those guys have all dealt with pretty serious injuries over the last 2 seasons. Keep those guys in the lineup, keep them healthy, and go on a real playoff run in the spring. I think that's really what you're looking at there for Dallas. Detroit. So Detroit's going with a new goalie tandem. They're going with Ville Husso and James Reimer. Now that could blow up in their face. James Reimer's numbers last year in San Jose were pretty good. But to expect that more consistently maybe could be a problem. Now James Reimer, remember, he was in San Jose. San Jose was terrible last year. So for him to go into that environment, this is going to be a better team in Detroit. But if they are to make the playoffs, they need that goalie tandem to put up some good numbers. And I think they are capable of that. I think Detroit's a really interesting team to watch going into this season. Edmonton. So Edmonton, there's a couple different ways you could go with the Oilers. But keeping the puck out of their net seems to be the main point here for the Edmonton Oilers. And what I think we have to remember with Edmonton is a lot of this is going to be mental this season. I was listening to a podcast the other day, the 32 Thoughts podcast, and they were talking to the coaching staff there in Edmonton. And so much of it is just buying into the idea of getting 1% better every day, just working on getting better, doing what you need to do. And Jay Woodcroft has the ability to do that. Is the team going to buy into that? Are they going to buy into the idea that they need to really be defensively savvy, defensively sound? Those are the key points for this team because they have the skill. They have Ekholm, Bouchard. That goaltending's a little shaky too, so hopefully the defense can help maybe bail out the goaltending a little bit. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking for early on this season at Edmonton. And if they're able to do that, they could be a legit contender, not only to win the division in the Pacific, but even potentially win the President's Trophy as one of the top teams in the league. The Florida Panthers. So, once again, this seems like a similar storyline here for the Florida Panthers. And shout out to Luis. He's our Panthers fan here on the channel. They need to overcome early season hangover / adversity. Listen, when you go on that run that they did last year, beating Boston, Toronto, did they beat Carolina? Yeah, Carolina in the conference finals. There's no easy path. And what we saw from Florida is a team that is very capable of doing what they did. They could do that again. But they need to get guys back healthy. Spencer Knight will be starting the season in the AHL. I think a lot of that has to do with the whole Alex Lyon situation, because if they were to waive Alex Lyon on waivers, there is the possibility that Tampa would pick him up as Vasilevsky's hurt. So I think that's a little bit of gamesmanship a little bit there by the Florida Panthers. Sergei Bobrovsky, if he has the right load in terms of games played and isn't the center of attention, I think the Florida Panthers will be okay. Alex Lyon is a very capable backup, and I think that's going to be a really big point of emphasis here for the Florida Panthers. Is I was trying to say that they're going to need Spencer Knight to be really good, but because he's in the AHL right now, they're going to need Alex Lyon actually to step up and really be good for them behind Bobrovsky. They have a couple injuries up front. Hopefully those guys come back healthy in the first couple months. Aaron Ekblad, I believe, who was the other guy that was there that was injured? So they've got a couple little injuries. Oliver Ekman-Larsson coming in. That's going to be interesting. So the Florida Panthers, there's going to be that hangover. It's how they overcome that is really going to be the difference, whether the Panthers make the playoffs or not later in the season. So the LA Kings are next. Phoenix Copley has to be above average, and that's asking for a lot. Phoenix Copley does not have a ton of NHL experience. He spent the last couple years in the American Hockey League with the Hershey Bears, who have been a good team, but it's a different level between Hershey in the AHL and the Los Angeles Kings at the NHL level. And Phoenix Copley did not have a great season last year. They traded Cal Peterson out to the Philadelphia Flyers, where I believe now he's in Montreal or Vancouver or something like that. Cal Peterson's no longer there. Corpy, Jonas Korpisalo, no longer there. Left the team, didn't have the money this free agency. He ends up going to Ottawa. So the LA Kings are back with Phoenix Copley. Going to be really important that he plays well. A lot of that is going to be maybe the defense. Again, the defense maybe having to bail him out a little bit, and I think they're definitely capable of doing that, but that's going to be a point of emphasis. The LA Kings, they've got a loaded roster up front, on the back end, but how is that goaltending going to hold up? That's going to be the difference for the LA Kings. The Minnesota Wild. So the Minnesota Wild, I think they've got a pretty good team on paper. They've obviously got Kaprizov, who is electric. We know how good Kaprizov is. We know how good a lot of these guys are. But that center core is weak. Any combination of Freddie Gaudreau, Joel Eriksson, Marco Rossi, a lot of unproven talent, or maybe just lack of talent overall. And I think Ryan Hartman getting re-signed is a good thing. That's another center potentially that comes back. But that's still not enough. And I do worry that that is going to be a problem for them in the sense that they need guys to overachieve. And especially down the middle, in the Western Conference in particular this year, the center depth in the Western Conference is unlike we've seen anything in the last couple of years. I think it's going to be really important for the Minnesota Wild to find a way to get the most out of that lemon with guys like Eriksson and Rossi and Hartman and Gaudreau and whoever else is going to play down the middle. They need those guys to be spot on this season. The Minnesota Wild. So the Montreal Canadiens. Let's move on to Montreal. So the Montreal Canadiens need those goalies to overachieve. That is a really tough situation when you consider that that defense is not that great either. So when I look at Montreal's goaltending, again, you're talking about Sam Montembeault and Jake Allen, doesn't give me a ton of confidence there. Now, they did also bring in Casey DeSmith. I don't know how that's going to play out. Actually, no, Casey DeSmith is in Vancouver now. I apologize. So it's Jake Allen and Montembeault. Again, not a huge fan of that, but they're going to have to find a way to make that work. And I just don't think the defense is deep enough or experienced enough to bail out that goaltending. But that goaltending has to be perfect for them then. If the defense isn't up to par, that goaltending has to be way above average if they want to get to the playoffs. And I just don't think they're capable of that. Nashville. A lot of people have interesting thoughts about Nashville, whether they're a playoff team or not. I think they'll be an interesting bubble team down the stretch at the very least. But they need some good scoring depth, potentially from the youth. Now, we saw at the end of last season that a lot of the youth movement came into effect in Nashville, and they played quite well. But this is a different story. Game 1 of the season, there's no like, oh, we're the underdog story, and maybe teams will be kind of like going into Nashville saying, oh, they're out of the playoffs, this should be an easy 2 points. There's none of that on night 1 of the season. They need to be ready to go. And I'm looking specifically at guys like Cody Glass, Phil Tomasino, Tommy Novak, Luke Evangelista, Juuso Parssinen. Those guys really need to step up for Nashville this season. Because you've got some good players. You've got Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist. I like all those guys. You need to see the depth coming up big for them. And I think they are capable of doing that. And that's why I think Nashville will be a playoff team, because I think that scoring depth will make a difference for them and will be the difference for them whether they make the playoffs or not. So now we move up to Newark, New Jersey. The New Jersey Devils. So the Devils are a similar situation to a lot of these teams. A lot like the LA Kings. The LA Kings in the sense that they've got a great forward group, a great defense, but that spotty, questionable goaltending. Now, there is more optimism with the Devils than the Los Angeles Kings in the sense of goaltending, but that's not saying much. Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanacek. Again, Akira Schmid played great in the playoffs, but again, not a large sample size at the National Hockey League level. So to expect him to come in and do exactly what he did in the first round against the Rangers, opening night of this season and through an 82-game schedule, I just don't know if that's going to happen. I'd hold the brakes on that. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for joining us, Chris. Let's go Devils. There you go. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, you're going to need a really good Akira Schmid and a good Vitek Vanacek because, man, I watched the Devils AHL squad, basically, go up and play my New York Islanders and pump the Islanders opening night roster. That is a very good, deep Devils team. And when you consider Siegenthaler's going to be better than he was last year, Dougie Hamilton had a great year, John Marino, Kevin Ball, Luke Hughes, Brendan Smith, and all that depth that they have behind that, again, it's going to come down to that goaltending. That is the difference for the New Jersey Devils, whether they are not only a playoff team, but potentially winning the President's Trophy, running away with the Metropolitan Division, and who knows, maybe even lifting Lord Stanley Cup in the Meadowlands in the next couple of months. We'll see what happens, but the Devils, they need that goaltending to be better. All right, so now we move on to a couple teams in the Eastern Conference here. So we've got the New York Islanders. So the Matt Barzal, Bo Horvat combo, we saw it in a very sparse amount last season. It sparked up a little bit once Matt Barzal got back from his injury, and then within a few games, Bo Horvat got hurt. So it was one of those things where the Islanders just could not catch a break with the guys getting injured. I'm hoping that we see a lot more of these two playing together. They are going to need to be good for the Islanders to make the playoffs because there isn't a ton of scoring depth on this team, and that's been well documented. And it's not a question of if. They just don't. This is a proven team that cannot score goals, and they are going to purely rely on Barzal and Horvat. And maybe Oliver Wahlstrom. The Islanders need to score more from these guys. That's going to be their key to making the playoffs. The New York Rangers. Interesting here for the Rangers. You know, the Rangers go out on a limb, bringing in Peter Laviolette. You know, there's a reason the Capitals got rid of him. Just saying, there is a reason they got rid of him. And I think that when you look at the Rangers, they're in a similar boat to the Capitals in the sense of they have the transition of young players and older players. And the way Laviolette has been this preseason, he has been really tough on those guys. It's almost like boot camp, where you have to break them down before you build them back up. And Laviolette has done a lot of breaking down guys in the preseason. And is that message resonating with Panarin and Kreider and Zibanejad and Trouba? You get what I'm saying here. That message has to transcend well with these guys if it's going to work. Because if not, Peter Laviolette, this is a huge gamble here. Going out in New York, criticizing the team as much as he is, it could work out and really become a huge win for the Rangers. It could also blow up in their face and turn into a huge loss and a huge missed opportunity. We'll see how the team responds to it, but that's going to be really important. I wanted to preface that. You might see some of the younger players. The way that Laviolette is, though, I just don't know how many of them are going to make the roster. You might see Brendan Ottman make the roster out of camp, but other than that, you know, they already sent back Ty Emberson. Braden Schneider will probably get in there. Eric Gustafsson will be there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that whole scenario. Jonathan Quick has to be a good backup. There's a couple of things that need to go well for the Rangers here. It's a different team than the team we saw in the spring last year with Patty Kane and Tarasenko. This is not that same team, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be interesting to see how the Rangers do with some of the changes to that roster. And, you know, don't forget a guy like Will Cully. He has really made his name noticed in New York. So keep an eye out for number 50 there at MSG this season. Will Cully is really making a name for himself for the Broadway Blue Shirts. So moving on to the Ottawa Senators. Again, goaltending is going to be a big factor here for Ottawa because I think they have a pretty good team overall. The criticism is going to fall on DJ Smith if it doesn't work out. So he is fighting for his job this season if they want to make the playoffs. But I think it's going to come down to the goaltending. And Jonas Korpisalo comes in on a 5-year, $25 million contract. It's $5 million per year. You're asking for a lot for a guy that has shown capabilities like he did with the Kings down the stretch last season. He played great in Columbus on a team that wasn't all that good. So if he can continue the success from last season, Jonas Korpisalo could be a great addition to the Ottawa Senators. But there is some questions about that health. and the injury bug coming in at a opportune time, right? He all of a sudden plays well in a contract year. But the injuries, that's going to be something to watch for Korpisalo. This is boom or bust by the Ottawa Senators. Jonas Korpisalo is the name to watch in Ottawa if they make the playoffs. Now, the Pittsburgh Penguins, you know what you're getting in Malkin. You know what you're getting in Crosby, Letang, Carlson. A lot of questions about the goaltending, and that is one I could talk about for a lot of these teams. But I'm going to stay away from that for this one because there's another storyline for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that is the defense. You've got a ton of great offensive-minded players, offensive defensemen, scoring depth. But do they have enough defensive players on this team? They traded Jeff Petrie. They traded some of that depth on the blue line that they had. They let go of guys like Dumoulin. So who is going to be the guys on this penalty kill? Teddy Bluger's no longer there. So up front, you're going to see guys like Lars Eller, Rem Pitlick, Nola Chari, Matt Nieto, Riley Smith coming in. You're going to rely a lot on the forward group in terms of the penalty kill because the defense is very different in their mindset. Ryan Graves, Chris Letang, Carlson, Pettersson, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, and Chad Ruhwedel. The only real pain-in-the-neck defenseman on this team might be Chad Ruhwedel. And that might be it. Pierre-Olivier Joseph got called out by Mike Sullivan in a good way. So hopefully Joseph has a good season this year. Ryan Graves, he's a big defenseman, and we saw that with the Devils. But the way he plays and his style is not in the sense of being a big defenseman. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works with Tanger. So keep an eye on that. At the moment, they have Carlson and Letang separated on the first and second pair, but I'm sure their minutes are going to be pretty evenly split. So that's going to be interesting to watch is how is Pittsburgh's philosophy defensively, because the goaltending isn't good enough. In Nedeljkovic, you guys always give me heat for how I say it, but either way, Nedeljkovic and Tristan Jarry. When Jarry is healthy, he is great, but he is not reliable in terms of being healthy. That is a huge issue for the Penguins, and the fact that they don't have that great defensive structure behind this team makes me even more concerned about what could potentially transpire, a nightmare scenario for that goaltending group. Philadelphia, just down the road. So the Philadelphia Flyers, we know there is a lot of facets of this team that are not good. Not good in any sense. You don't have Matvei Michkov yet. Owen Tippett's coming back. That's exciting. Cam York hopefully gets into the lineup, but he's expected to be injured, at least for the beginning of the season. So what do we expect from the Flyers? If they are to make the playoffs, go on this miraculous run, be able to beat teams ahead of them that we mentioned already, Pittsburgh, the Islanders, the Rangers, the Devils, Carolina, Washington, Columbus, what are they going to have to do to compete with those teams? And they need full and utter buy-in to John Tortorella. Last year, we saw Tortorella flushing the toilet a lot. Flushing the toilet a lot in the sense of getting guys out of there that didn't have the right mentality that John Tortorella has and going in the same direction in the sales. Whose sale is going the same way as John Tortorella? Those are the guys that stayed in Philadelphia. And you saw guys like Kevin Hayes, Tony D, Brendan Lemieux, no longer there. All those guys have moved on. Provorov, right? So, what is going to be the difference? Torts gets the most out of this team. And we've seen Tortorella do it before. Don't think that this is impossible. We've seen some weird Vancouver teams where he has turned them into good teams that maybe shouldn't have been. New York Ranger teams that would go to the conference finals year after year with Sean Avery on the lineup. I'm not saying it's going to happen because I doubt it. The Flyers don't have the skill. And this is perfect bulletin board material. I'll probably be on the Flyers and the Jumbotron at Wells Fargo Center. Oh, man, everybody's doubting the Flyers. But if John Tortorella can get the most out of this team, it is possible. And if those guys are motivated and they're in the right mindset, the Philadelphia Flyers could be a really pain-in-the-ass team to play against. And that's what Tortorella preached last year. I think they're going to be able to execute on it more this season. And the game I saw them play against the Islanders earlier last week, they are scoring a little bit. They're tough to play against, and if Carter Hart is healthy and ready to go and is going to be on his A game and Vezina caliber, watch out for the Flyers. That could be a real interesting team to watch for. So, based off of what I've seen in the preseason, the Flyers have impressed me the most out of anybody, and that's saying a lot. San Jose, complete opposite direction. Similar mentality in terms of expectations, but totally different in what I think they're actually capable of. I have very much of the mindset that there is just not much of a pulse left for the San Jose Sharks this season. Hey, listen, we're going to see guys like Duclair. We're going to see guys coming in there like William Eklund. But this team is not there yet. And until Will Smith comes in and some of the other guys, they are not there yet. And this is going to be a tough season for them. There is not much confidence in this team from my view. Logan Couture and Tomas Hertl is about it. This team is going to be very different come springtime. I think that we're going to see Mike Greer really sink his teeth into this roster. Everything would have to go perfect for the San Jose Sharks to make the playoffs. Everybody would have to be terrible in the Pacific. They'd have to beat all their teams in the Pacific, and they'd have to win a couple of games across the league. And that's just, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. So San Jose is the only team I'm really at a loss of words in terms of what I think could go right for them to make the playoffs. Literally everything has to go perfect for the San Jose Sharks. All right. So the St. Louis Blues. This one's pretty easy too, and I think a lot of you will agree here too. Jordan Binnington has to be 2019 Jordan Binnington. And to be honest with you, we haven't seen 2019 Jordan Binnington since 2019. He's dealt with a lot of issues mentally, and a lot of his own self-demons have really been fighting him. But when I look at what we have with Binnington is a great potential of goaltender, but I just don't think it's executed. And I think that with the way this team is today, nobody's going to tell Binnington what to do, which is fine, but his strong personality is a cancer to this team. And I think that's going to be the downfall of the Blues. So unless Binnington goes back to what we expected him to be in 2019, the St. Louis Blues, I honestly think we'll miss the playoffs in 2024. Seattle. So we're getting close to the end, guys. Make sure, if you have not already, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I definitely appreciate that a ton. And if you want to become a member here on the channel, I also have my membership links down below and throughout the channel. So make sure to check those out as well. We'll be doing live streams throughout the week on game nights. It all starts Tuesday. There's that triple header on Tuesday to start the regular season. We'll be live streaming the later games, so make sure to stay tuned for that. So thank you guys so much to the bunch of you that are sticking it out with me. I definitely appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Shout out to Irish, Chris. You guys are awesome. Thank you for joining us here this Sunday morning. So Seattle. The goalie's got to be really good. It's been a little bit of a weird situation there because now it's the goalie tandem we expected from year one. Philip Grubauer and Chris Drieger. So those are your two guys in between the pipes. Like I said, I really like their forward group. I think Yanni Gourde, Matty Beniers. If we see Jack Hartai, I think that's going to be nice to see him in the lineup. Shane Wright got sent to the AHL, but that means they have a really good forward group. I really like Seattle. The defense is comparable to Vegas. And I think we saw that in the first round against Colorado, just how good Seattle's defense actually is. They're big, they're mean, they're tough to play against. Their gap closure is really good. They make it life fairly easy for the goaltenders. I really like the Seattle Kraken, and I think as long as those goalies can do what they need to do and take care of business, the other facets of Seattle's game, I'm really not questioning. I think it's there. The potential is there. They need the goalies to be good. That is their Achilles heel. So we'll see what happens there for Seattle. Tampa. Last week in our preseason power rankings video, if you guys didn't watch that, make sure to check that out. But basically, we talked about how a lot of you guys are not high on the Tampa Bay Lightning going into this season. There was a little bit of a dust-up with Stamkos saying how he's disappointed about maybe the uncertainty of his future in Tampa past this season with a new contract. Andrei Vasilevsky is out with an injury to start the season. He had surgery, so he's going to be out for a while. And that means your goalie tandem is Jonas Johansson and Hugo Alnefelt. I don't remember how to say his name. Hugo and Jonas Johansson. That's your goalie tandem. So Tampa needs to overcome some serious issues early on in the season. And this is the first time I'm saying this in today's video. And you're going to hear it a lot from me throughout the beginning of this season. And you guys even said it, which is great. The fact you guys do actually listen to me every once in a while. You cannot lose a season in October and November. Well, you can't. No, the opposite. You can't win a season or make the playoffs in September, October, and November. But you can lose a season in October, November, and December. If Tampa comes out of the gate and we're around American Thanksgiving and they're below 500 by like 5 games, there is genuine reason for concern there. And not because I don't think Tampa is capable of overcoming that when Vasilevsky comes back healthy. It more so has to do with the teams in this division are better. This is the best the Atlantic Division has looked in a really long time. And that transition between the top teams in Toronto, Florida, Boston, Tampa, the gap between them and teams like Buffalo and Ottawa and Detroit and even Montreal to an extent, that gap is closing by the year. And if Tampa leaves points on the board, maybe it's 10 points in the first 2 months of the season. If they leave 10 points on the board, that could be the difference whether Tampa makes the playoffs or not in 2024. And that's why I think overcoming that early season adversity will be the hallmark of the Tampa Bay Lightning season. Like I said, you don't win seasons in October and November, but you sure can lose them. And that's going to be the mentality for the Tampa Bay Lightning going into this season. So that's what I think of Tampa. So let's move on to our final 5 teams here today. All right, let's finish this out on a good note. So Toronto, this one's fairly simple because the criticism has always been, well, they're not big enough. They don't have enough grit, enough sandpaper to their roster. You can't say that anymore. Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, they all come into this team. Ryan Reeves comes into this team. Not the same Toronto teams that we've been accustomed to. And I think that's a benefit. Now, having more grit, I think they will be able to do that, and they will make the playoffs that way. They're also going to need good goaltending, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. Goaltending has to be better for this team, and with the uncertainty with Matt Murray, well, I think it's pretty certain that we will not see him, but the lack of a true number one here, Ilya Samsonov has to step up this season. Joseph Woll, he's going to need to be good as the backup, and if they could get a good tandem there and reliably go back and forth between the two of them, I think Toronto will be okay. And again, they've got that different dimension to their game that we haven't seen, which is that grit and sandpaper, and I think that's going to be huge for them. We have a $2.79 Canadian super chat from the one and the only Ali Dash. Thank you so much, Ali Dash. Motherfucking yo. I love that. That is great, Ali Dash. Thank you so much for joining us. So thank you for the super chat, Ali Dash. So continuing along, hopefully I woke up some of you guys that were snoozing a little bit. So the Vancouver Canucks are our next team, and they are my dark horse in the Western Conference. I know. This is a similar story to last season. I had Vancouver as a team people weren't talking about, but that defense was abysmal. And if they get any competency on this blue line, Carson Soucy coming in, he's probably going to be playing alongside Quinn Hughes. I think he's going to have a breakout season this year. He spent last season with Seattle, was with Minnesota for a few years before that. I think that's a great pickup for them. Also, we're going to see a little bit of a change up front. A little bit of a change in terms of their style of play. I think Teddy Bluger coming in is a perfect fit for Rick Tocchet, A. And B, again, as well as that defense being terrible, their penalty kill was also terrible. Teddy Bluger coming in, he's a good penalty killer. He's not going to be a guy scoring a ton of goals for Vancouver, but he is going to be a guy that keeps the puck out of the net. And I think that's going to be huge here for the Vancouver Canucks. The penalty kill is going to be better. They're going to be better defensively. And a healthy Thatcher Demko is the key to success because everything will revolve around Thatcher Demko. You know, what do they always say? Your best penalty killer sometimes has to be your goalie. Sometimes your best defenseman also has to be your goaltender. And a healthy Thatcher Demko. They also bring in Casey DeSmith. Maybe that's going to ease a little bit of pressure for Thatcher Demko so he doesn't strain any injuries maybe. They need Thatcher Demko in there, and I think Thatcher Demko staying healthy will be enough for the Vancouver Canucks to make the playoffs. I really do. I really, really like Vancouver. So the Vegas Golden Knights, you know, this one's kind of tough because I think they're the opposite of San Jose in the sense that I think they can make the playoffs just from the sense that they have a good team. And as long as enough guys stay healthy, they'll be fine. They have enough depth on this team that even if they lose one or two guys, Ivan Barbashev can step up. Chandler Stevenson can step up. William Karlsson, he can also step up. On the blue line, you have guys that can step up. Mark Stone needs to stay healthy, though. Because the difference between everybody else on this team and Mark Stone is he's got that C on his jersey. And the leadership aspect of his game. This is going to be a different situation if a guy like Stone goes down because he is a lot harder to replace on this lineup. So Mark Stone needs to stay healthy. I'm sure he's happy that Hayden Hodgson got sent down to the Ontario Reign after his hit from the Los Angeles Kings. And I'm sure Mark Stone batted a grin at that. Ali Desh in the chat said, Vancouver's been spinning their tires in mediocrity for like 10 to 15 years. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They can't decide whether they can rebuild or just actually do it the right way. We're going to find out a lot of the future of this team when they have to re-sign Elias Pettersson this year. Because if Elias Pettersson does not sign, there's going to be a multitude of issues for this team. And the talk about maybe Quinn Hughes, I've tried so hard to avoid these rumors, but the rumors that Quinn Hughes could go to the Devils, if Elias Pettersson leaves this team, might actually come to fruition. But we're not talking about that today. But I am pretty close to that. Washington. The Washington Capitals. They need a ton of buy-in to that coaching staff. And they will make the playoffs if Evgeny Kuznetsov is back on his game. I think that's another big thing. And the branch effect of Evgeny Kuznetsov getting to that level of where he was when they won the Cup in 2018, he needs to buy into the new head coach in Spencer Carberry. Spencer Carberry is a good coach. Don't get it twisted. He was there with the Hershey Bears. He's been with this organization in the past. He's coached up a lot of these younger players in the past. He goes to Toronto as an assistant, does quite well there, and he comes back to his roots in Washington. Spencer Carberry has a good message with these guys, but it's weird because he's a former assistant of the Capitals. These guys have grown up with this guy as a coach, but he's now no longer the good cop. He is now the bad cop head coach. And how do some of those veterans take that message from Carberry? How much respect do the veterans in Washington have for Spencer Carberry? Because we saw when they brought up, I forgot his name. Before Peter Laviolette, Washington had a coach, Todd Reirden. When Todd Reirden came up, there was a huge lack of disrespect from the Capitals group. And Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and all those guys were basically making up their own lines. They were like, no, I'm staying on the ice. The players ran the asylum in Washington under Reirden. You do not want that to happen here with Carberry. That's going to be another big point here for the Washington Capitals. And welcome to the stream, Morgan. What is going on, buddy? It's been a while. but I'm glad to see you back in here. Vancouver doesn't have a good team. They have a few stars in important positions, sure. However, they have nothing behind them. And I do disagree with you on that, Morgan. I do like guys that are coming in there, like Teddy Bluger, who are going to help out that penalty kill. I think Carson Soucy is going to be a great compliment for a guy like Quinn Hughes. But yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty there, right? Like, Vasily Podkolzin didn't look super spectacular last year. You're going to need to see more from him. Andrei Kuzmenko played well, but can he do that again? So I understand what you're saying there, but there's a little more beneath Vancouver that a lot of people don't see. So we'll see if they're able to change your mind by the end of the season there, Morgan. But I'm really glad to see you back in the chat. Our fellow Vegas Golden Knights fan here in the chat. And Vancouver, Ali Desh also doesn't like Vancouver's depth. Interesting. All right, so you guys are not a fan of Vancouver. Okay. And then to wrap up if they will make the playoffs if this happens, we're heading up to Winnipeg. We're heading to the Peg, and we are looking at that forward group. Forwards are above average. You know what you're getting with Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor. But what about everybody else? There's no Pierre-Luc Dubois there. There's no Jansen Harkins there. He got claimed off waivers. Who's going to come in and be the depth of the Winnipeg Jets? Because Rasmus Kupari comes in, Alex Iafallo, Gabe Velarde, who I really like. They need those guys to really step up and be above their expectations this season if Winnipeg makes the playoffs. Because, like I said, you know what you're getting from the higher end guys, but what about everybody else? There's no Blake Wheeler here, right? Mark Scheifele, we know what he is. But the depth needs to be better for the Winnipeg Jets. And a lot of people like the Jets' depth compared to some of these other teams in the Western Conference, those bubble teams in the Central and the Pacific. A lot of people like Winnipeg. I'm not so high on that. Now, I think their defense is pretty solid. And, of course, they have Connor Hellebuck for now. I think it's going to be the forward group there in Winnipeg that is the difference whether they make the playoffs or not in 2024. Breakout year for Perfetti, hopefully. I think he has dealt with a lot of injuries. That's been the big problem with Cole Perfetti, Morgan, is apparently, so at the end of last season, he had a big hit on him, and he missed the remainder of the season, last like 2 or 3 weeks. And then during the preseason this year, again, he took another headshot. So I don't know if that's the lack of coaching really being on him. Like, listen, Cole, you got to keep your head up. This is not the juniors anymore. You got to be ready for guys to be coming to take your head off. That's going to be really important here for Cole Perfetti moving forward. He has to adjust to that because this is a guy that's now, if he's hurt, this could prove to be a really big issue for a guy that has the skill, but because of injuries gets held back. I really don't want to see that for Perfetti. There's so much potential there. There's so much untapped skill there. And I want to see the best for Perfetti. I think a lot of you guys will agree with me on that. We have not seen the end of Perfetti, but he's got to keep his head up. That is going to be an important thing for him this season. And Ali Desh, thank you for joining us. He brings up, he says, the Jets D lacks name recognition outside of Morrissey. Yes, I didn't even mention Josh Morrissey. What a great season he had last year. But the guys they have can play defense. They are pretty steady and reliable types. Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at the Jets blue line because, yeah, there's not a lot of recognition there. There's not a ton of pop, but who they do have, right? You've got Josh Morrissey. You've got Neil Pionk, Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, Dylan Sandberg, Nate Schmidt. You know, back in the day, Nate Schmidt was a top pairing defenseman in Vegas. Neil Pionk is a pretty good shutdown defenseman. Back in the day, Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello were both really good defensemen. You know, still to a mitigating level, they still are. But I don't know. That defense, yeah, like there's not a ton of star power or name recognition there. But again, that could be maybe just buying into the system. If they really buy into the system of the coaching staff there in Winnipeg, well, then maybe it doesn't hurt them so bad. And that really surprised me when they brought in the coaching staff that they did. And I keep forgetting his name. That's why I'm not bringing it up. I think it's Rick Bowness. Yeah, Rick Bowness is a very good coach. And despite not having that great of a defense in terms of name recognition, Rick Bowness did this in Dallas as well. He gets the most out of that group, specifically defense. And because they have a really good goalie, plus that structure on the blue line, that is a benefit for them. So we'll see what happens. Morgan said, hey, let the Jets fall back so they can sell Hellebuck to the Devils at the deadline. Maybe. That's been talked about a lot. But I think the price tag was too high for the Devils. And I think it was going to finally involve a guy like Dawson Mercer. And I think New Jersey just said, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it. I think they're going to ride it out, see what happens here with Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanacek. Let me know what you guys think. Leave your final thoughts here. We're coming up to the top of the hour. This was perfect. I was able to get this done in an hour. Pretty solid. So let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know your guys' thoughts, what you guys think going into the season. Like I said, our first stream will be on Tuesday. We'll be doing a live stream. The rest of the during the week live streams are going to be members only. We're going to be doing members only live streams. So if you guys are interested in joining that, make sure to become a member today. I think the lowest tier is like $2 or $3. So if you want to join us for those during the week live streams on a normal basis, make sure to become a member today. We also have, if you guys can see here down below, we've got the new templates going into this season. We have some new goal line hockey merch. So just in time for the beginning of this season, we have, that's right, the Yo collection itself. So we've got goal line hockey branded merch with hashtag Yo on it. That is our slogan. That is our brand here. So if you guys are interested in any of that stuff, definitely make sure to check that out. Like I said, Tuesday at probably like 9 o'clock, because I do have work till 9 o'clock. 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday will be our first game live stream, which I am so excited for. Connor Bedard, Sidney Crosby. Earlier in the day, unfortunately, I'm going to miss this game, but Nashville, Tampa. And then, of course, we're going to see the banner raising ceremony in Vegas. That's right, Morgan. In Vegas for the Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Seattle Kraken, the most new franchises in the National Hockey League. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we'll see how things go moving forward, because this is going to be a big season. This is a big season for a lot of teams, a lot of uncertainty for teams that, we've just assumed because of the logo and the brand that they just always make the playoffs and they're going to be there. That might not be the case. And teams that we've, for the most part, said, oh, they're not going to make the playoffs. They haven't made a playoff series in a decade. Well, maybe they'll surprise us and actually make the playoffs. There's a lot of uncertainty here. But guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know what you think down below going into this season. What are your thoughts? I do appreciate it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you again next time. Peace out, guys.